I've been a senator,
You haven't done it.
And
You haven't
I
done
have
it.
been a
And excuse
Secretary
me,
of State, and I have
Your
done.
husband signed
80 million. Sure, it's smaller than the 100 million predicted, but it's still pretty impressive. The largest television audience ever to watch a debate. Another nearly 3 million watched online. Somewhere in that audience were quite a few people too young to vote this time around. What did they think about the name-calling and bickering? This is, after all, the country they'll soon inherit. And what about those who actually have the ability to vote, but just won't do it? Maybe it'll sway them to get out, register, and actually vote.
I'm Steve Steger in for Kyle Clark. This is Next. Natives love to point out there are a lot of transplants here. That number has grown especially over the last 4 years. You can imagine some of them want to vote and those who don't should. It's voter registration day and we're getting a lot of questions from transplants about how to register, especially if they don't have a Colorado ID yet.
If you don't have a Colorado driver's license yet, there's several ways to register. The easiest way is probably to download our paper form. It asks for your driver's license, but it also says if you don't have one, you can provide the last 4 digits of your Social Security number, or you can affirm that you don't have a driver's license or a Social Security number, and the county will still register you to vote.
You did hear that right. First-time Colorado voters don't necessarily have to show any ID to register to vote, even if you do it in person, but you will need to send in a copy of some form of legal ID, like a copy of your passport when you mail in your ballot. Did you get all that? Here's a simpler way to handle it. Get a Colorado driver's license. You're supposed to do it within 30 days of moving here anyway. The Secretary of State's office told us they're getting hundreds of calls about voting and registration. We'll put some of the answers to those frequently asked questions on the next section of 9news.com.
Because I'm in debate club here, and so I understand the way debates should work and like how good debates work. So watching that unravel was just kind of it was almost irritating in a way.
That's Daniel McCorkerdale. He's a junior at the Denver Center for International Studies. He's one of the millions of kids under 18 who watched the debate last night, and you can see even he gets it. Oh, by the way, he's taking a class on argument, which is what he saw a lot of last night. We'll continue with our conversation with Daniel and another student in that class in just a little bit and let them grade the candidates. We shouldn't rush to try to figure out the long-term impact of last night's debate. Consider how the Rocky Mountain News reported it on the first television debate. John F. Kennedy debated Richard Nixon in 1968. The Rocky called it a draw. History has decisively called that debate for Kennedy, in large part because he appeared polished and confident on television. Nixon struggled on screen, sweaty, out of place. The Post played it safe the day after reporting on that with smiles, then the spiels. We'll stop nerding out in a minute about the debate, I promise. But first, former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt wrote to JFK after that first debate with a letter that was written on this day in 1960. The 2-page letter has a letterhead that says Mrs. Franklin D. Roosevelt with a New York City address. In that letter, Eleanor says it was a milestone for TV and a really good way to campaign. But she also warned him he spoke too fast and was overconfident. Sounds a lot like a Next viewer email. The social media campaign, #ElectionCollection, is where libraries are sharing all of this cool campaign history stuff until Election Day. The Hoover Presidential Library reminded us that campaigning in motion pictures preceded the famous Nixon-Kennedy TV debate. Hoover's campaign put on a campaign film on wheels, giving us a really solid idea for our next road trip series here on Next. Well, clowns have been in the news a lot lately. They are creepy enough as it is. But that's nothing compared to the hoax that swirled around in Greeley last night and led to a big investigation, a hoax the district attorney there is not joking about.
Coulrophobia, an irrational fear of clowns. I just learned that word today and realized I struggled with it for much of my childhood. Maybe I still do a bit today. A lot of people have it. But an irrational fear is a lot different than a rational fear, which surfaced in northern Colorado Monday, all because of a Facebook post that spread like wildfire. The post threatened a shooting on Halloween night, which in turn blew up into an idea that clowns would be going into Greeley schools to carry out shootings. Weld County District Attorney Michael Rourke says there's nothing funny about that. Investigators believe a 15-year-old student is responsible for starting those rumors. Anyone who is caught making up this type of threat could be charged with interference with staff, faculty, or students of educational institutions. That sounds serious, and it really is. That's a crime that carries up to an 18-month sentence in jail. And the Weld County District Attorney's Office says if you're caught making up this type of threat, then they'll see who's laughing.
Back to that phobia for a bit. In case you were wondering, an estimated 5 to 12% of Americans have that phobia of clowns, which I'm not going to try to pronounce again. Our psychologist, Dr. Max Wachtel, says this might have something to do with the uncanny valley problem. Basically, the closer a non-human gets to a human that looks like a human, but failing to be perfectly human, the more freaked out they get. See, it's a complex psychological thing, but still creepy. If you've watched this show for the last month or so, you've seen our obsession with giant vegetables. Just told you about one last night. Someone set another state record for a giant pumpkin. Our interest in that made us inadvertently notice something else.
This year's pumpkin weigh-in at Jared's nursery was a bit of a disappointment, not because of the giant that set the state record. That was pretty cool. It was more about what wasn't there.
And I got a text saying that he had a workload that just wouldn't let us borrow a crane for our giant pumpkin drop.
4.
The giant pumpkin drop is a tradition at Jared's.
1.
They do it almost every year.
Unfortunately, the last time that he wasn't able to help us out was the year of the flood, which was 2013.
They needed cranes then, but for a much different reason. This one seems more positive. The company that provides the cranes actually has a waiting list. Business is booming. Same story from others, too.
To the point where it's silly, the amount of business that's out there.
Rocky Wilson helps manage the fleet for RMS, one of the largest providers in Denver. They supply those giant cranes you see on the Denver skyline, a lot bigger than the ones you might use to drop a gourd. Rocky says there's a pretty big waiting list for both.
You know, I feel sorry for the poor guy that wants to build a little deck and put a hot tub in his backyard, because getting the crane to crane it in and being able to get concrete for that is very hard to do.
The cranes are all tied up, which, while frustrating to that dude who wants a hot tub, is actually good news for the economy. The staff at Jared's agrees growth is good.
You know, you can pretty much go into any neighborhood and find, 1 or 2 cranes.
They just hope for a free day next year so the crowd doesn't have to miss out on this again.
You don't want to miss out on that. The company we talked to had to increase its crane inventory 7 times to keep up with demand. And they say they see demand keeping up. Better hope you've just got a bunch of cranes. Hey, may I make a recommendation? This is where we point you towards something that isn't ours, but is awesome. Our partners at the Denver Business Journal have been working hard on a story called Crane Watch. The idea is to help real estate developers and CEOs keep up to date with construction projects around Denver. But the map is absolutely helpful for people like you and me who are just curious. They're plotting major projects on an interactive map so people know what's going on. And by major, we mean projects that are worth more than $10,000 or $10 million, excuse me. And the map is color-coded so it's easy to track. They're using permit records from counties around the metro area to figure out information about each of the areas under construction. 7 counties are included in this: Adams, Arapahoe, Boulder, Broomfield, Denver, Douglas, and Jefferson counties. There's a link to the Crane Watch on the next Facebook page. That's also where you can make a recommendation for our next recommendation. Hey, remember that video we showed you of the long lines at Denver's courthouse last week, all because of that broken glass shut down the main entrance there? We learned today that entrance, or entrance, is still closed. Apparently the wheels of maintenance grind just as slowly as the wheels of justice. City crews are still working on repairing the glass, which is the natural border of that really cool staircase in the front of the Lindsay Flanagan courthouse. They aren't sure how long it'll take to fix, so you'll have to use the side entrance in the meantime and get there early, which is just good advice for court anyway. Well, we wanted to share some good news tonight. Legacy High School's head football coach is back on the field. Wayne Voorhees resuming his role after being in that bad school bus crash on September 11th. We'll get to hear from him tomorrow when he's back at varsity football practice. Coach Kyle Ryder is still recovering. He's been released from the hospital, but hasn't been cleared to go back to work. Coach Matt Krupa is still in the hospital.
You thought the pundits were tough critics.
There still needs to be a lot of growth and improvement for both of them.
These students can't even vote, and they've got it all figured out. The beer that's really gonna bum a few stoners out. And too many camera turns probably sidelined our starting quarterback. Send your remedies, because if Kyle doesn't get back, chances are I screw something up. Next.
Oh, a beautiful summer-like day in fall. I'm meteorologist Kathy Sabin here in the studios, and we are looking outside. It's just a beautiful evening. Sun getting ready to go down. Winds are light, and a nice drive home on I-25. No major traffic issues there. Our high at 83, way above the average, but nowhere in record territory. I think we're actually done with the 90s for the year. There's a little bit of moisture trying to move into southern Colorado from the southwest, but for the most part, high pressure will keep the storm track to the north, even with a weak dry front coming through tomorrow. Lots of sunshine and temperatures above average for one more time. We may actually see a little bit of shower activity west of the Continental Divide about this time tomorrow night, but Denver, the Front Range and Eastern Plains, mild and dry, including tonight. Clear, cool, and 49 degrees in the city. Tomorrow, the sun's up just before 7 o'clock in the morning, and we'll look for highs above average again. That front coming in dry, more of a wind shift than anything else. Temperatures trend above average until the end of the week. A stronger front moving through. Slight cooling trend, mid-70s for Friday and Saturday, with a slightly better chance of showers. Moisture is pretty limited heading into the weekend, so head for the hills. It is beautiful in the Colorado High Country. Everything you need to know about fall, and you know that fall foliage outing that you're planning, it's all on 9news.com. I can't believe, Steve, it's almost October.
I know, fall. Love it. Thanks, Kathy. Hey, high schoolers, we've found a way for you to skip class, and it's legit. In fact, you'll get about $11 an hour to do it. You just need to sign up to be a student judge on Election Day. They're looking for 16 or 17-year-olds. The gig requires a day of training ahead of time, so another day you can get out of school. You can actually do it any time or in any of the counties in Colorado. Just be sure to get permission from your school ahead of time. We can't say that enough. You have a few more weeks to apply. We'll put the information up on the next page on 9news.com. Maybe we found the perfect candidates for that job. Those students who were learning all about argument in a Denver classroom, they watched The Big Show last night through a different lens than we might have. Then they spoke through the lens of photojournalist Mike Grady.
Arguing is a crucial part of the Passages class at the Denver Center for International Studies.
So students are crafting arguments and thesis statements right now to prepare a college-level argumentative essay.
A class full of students like Sierra Romero.
I'm focusing on the Israel and Palestine conflict.
And Daniel McCorkerdale.
I'm currently researching nonverbal communication strategies.
They know what makes a good argument.
Piecing together strands of acceptable and knowledgeable evidence.
That your facts are accurate and that what you are bringing to the table and providing and telling other people is going to strengthen your argument.
The skills these students learn from their teacher are also useful outside the classroom.
Especially with these debates that we just experienced recently.
Many of these young verbal warriors watched Clinton and Trump square off in their first debate last night. They noticed some shortcomings from Trump.
He gave very broad and unspecific pieces of evidence.
He didn't back up his points. Like they weren't accurately based.
Most say Clinton came off as the more prepared nominee.
Hillary Clinton went into the debate knowing what to expect and knowing what she wanted to get across.
So she knew what she was going to say in advance. Like she knew what points she wanted to touch on.
If he had to grade them,
I would say that she got a B+, and I'd say Donald Trump probably a B, but the expectations were much lower.
However, if his students needed help on an assignment, they'd turn to one candidate.
Hillary would probably be the safer bet for my argument.
Well, Lady Hillary Clinton's gonna come through for me.
For Next, I'm Kim Christensen.
So if the candidates didn't like Mr. Garvey's grades, they have 2 more chances to improve those grades, once on Sunday, October 9th, and again on Wednesday, October 19th.
Beer snob stoners are watching this one from afar.
It tastes nothing like weed. Honestly, it tastes like an IPA.
Why there probably won't quickly be a new category at GABF. Prison seems like a good time to catch up on some reading. Your selection just may be slim. And a sign so confusing, we might have to turn to Aerosmith for the answer. Next.
We don't always care about those national fill-in-the-blank days, but one national thingy did catch our attention. National Banned Book Week, which started on Sunday. Every year, the American Library Association highlights books that are added to the banned book lists around the country, whether in public schools or prisons. And this week, the Texas prison system is getting some attention. According to the Human Rights Defense Center, the Texas prison system has expanded its banned book list to about 15,000 books. Here at home, Colorado's Department of Corrections says it does not have a banned book list. The DOC says it evaluates books coming into prisons on a one-at-a-time basis. Good luck getting the following titles to someone inside prison, though. Prison Escapes by Jack Chatham, Marijuana Smuggling for Fun and Profit by Robert Bach, and Digging Tunnels by Joanne Mackin. Next question. What are the gun rules on national forest lands? 9 News photojournalist Chris Hansen wanted to know. That's because he found a live round in his campfire this morning in the Bridger-Teton National Forest in Wyoming. Yes, we occasionally let photographers take time off too. But his experience made us think, what about Colorado? What are the rules about live ammunition, and is it legal to carry a firearm in Colorado National Forest? So today, we figured it out.
In Colorado National Forest and grasslands, visitors may carry a firearm. However, you need to ensure that you're following state and federal regulations. So if they're not yours, and if you come across something that's unsafe or suspicious, don't engage, report it.
Coolest class photo ever. Let's make this simple. There are both state laws and federal regulations. Everyone needs to double check before carrying a gun onto national forests and grasslands. Recreational shooting is allowed if you follow the rules. Some are obvious, like you have to be at least 150 yards away from homes, campsites, buildings, or other occupied areas. And you shouldn't shoot in a cave, and you shouldn't shoot across a road or a body of water. There's a whole list of rules and regulations and who to contact if you have questions on the next page. You should check with the Forest Service in the area you plan to visit before bringing weapons onto the property. Just double check. It's a good idea. Beer drinkers, there is a new beer on tap that is truly Colorado. It's been around for a year, but now it could hit kegs and liquor stores' shelves across the country. Victoria Sanchez explains it's not so secret ingredient.
So this is where it all started. It's our small, tiny little brewing system.
There are hundreds of breweries in Colorado.
This is a 1.5 barrel system.
But this one in Aurora is doing things a little differently.
They're coming from around the world wanting to try cannabis-infused beer.
Yep, you heard that right. Cannabis-infused brewskis.
Ooh.
Let's answer the question you're all asking. Can you get high?
Not high and drunk, maybe just drunk.
Yeah, this is the prototype, actually.
Meet Mason Hembry, the beer's creator and dude of Dad and Dude's Breweria. He's waited a year to get the federal green light on his recipe and is on his way to selling General Washington's secret stash in all 50 states.
You know, when we first released, everybody believed, oh, hey, a Colorado brewery doing that makes sense. But they didn't think we could sell it outside of Colorado. The coolest part is the fact that we can bring the debate about cannabis and beer to the entire country.
But before getting the go-ahead from the government, he needed to get past a much higher authority.
My anti-alcohol, anti-pot mom.
I really actually have always had a negative attitude about marijuana.
Although she's a brewery co-owner, she's not a drinker and definitely doesn't smoke weed.
We don't have pot nor beer. There's no THC in it. Why would anyone put pot or THC in a beer?
I could think of a few reasons. But after some explaining, her son convinced her of what some consider potential medical and therapeutic benefits of the cannabis plant that doesn't cause a high.
But I honestly don't think it's the big evil thing that I always thought it was.
If you think this latest brew is a fad, beer drinkers say the IPA is actually pretty good.
I've already had 2.
For Next, I'm Victoria Sanchez.
Dad and Dudes hopes to have that beer canned in November, off to all 50 states by January. A sign of the times or a mixed message? Next. It's a sign. Actually, there are 2 signs and they're confusing. Which way do you go? Which way should pedestrians cross over? Left? Right? Should we flip the coin? This is a mixed message that was spotted at 13th and Cherokee in Denver. Kayla Marie tweeted it. Perhaps Steven Tyler would know the answer. Who knows? We want to see your signs. Tweet them at me or send me an email. I'm going to go check on Kyle. I'll see you next time.